Well, surprise, surprise. It's early afternoon, Thursday, this January 9th, right? Man, January is a messed up month. It flies by and it's almost like, I don't even know how to describe it. It just seemed like the other day it was Christmas. Bam. Now we're into a new year, 2025. 2025. And like most of you, we've all had time to sit on and look at and review and wonder and do all kinds of things with this Idaho case. Let me make sure hang on. That crazy YouTube just went off on me. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? Anyway, let's see here. Refresh over here on X. Let me see if what's its name is rolling. The Rumble. Let's see. Rumble appears to be rolling. Put that on live. And we're at YouTube. We got Rumble. I'll put a little hello to everybody in here. Yes, it's an unusual time. But I've been watching a whole bunch of different videos and there's some things that we've accepted this whole time and we discuss and go back and forth about. The irony of all of that is as I said in the title, there's zero connection that any car had anything at all to do with this crime. There just isn't any evidence to support all of the allegations in that probable cause affidavit. And it's kind of frustrating when you think about it, because I try to stick with the facts, and so far there isn't a single fact on the points that were made that they claim were a probable cause to arrest somebody for 4 homicides. I mean, they definitely listed a bunch of things that as an investigator I would be like all over, like white on rice. And I think the rest of you would agree. The fact that this that the story that they used to obtain an arrest warrant just seems kind of crazy to me. It really almost seems to me, and maybe some of you will agree, and you feel free to chime in. I'll actually put a link out here if somebody wants to come in, because I'd be happy to hear someone's the opposing opinion to this. And let's have a conversation. Show me where any Elantra had any connection to the crime, direct connection to the crime, not some observational and then descriptional by the police. I just don't see where you can even come in close and say that a car was involved in that crime. You have no imagery, you have no witness, you have nothing from the car to the house, nothing from the house to the car. You have a horrific murder scene that has no forced entry on any of the doors that were locked within the property. And what are you left with when you look at that crime scene? Factually, what are you left with? And that's the real problem. I'm sure you would disagree. I mean, you're welcome to come up and share your disagreement. But other than the police telling you what they caught on video, there is no video showing somebody exiting that car and entering that home. And the idea suggests, well, it might be sealed. It's just ridiculous. If it were sealed, there'd be no talk of a white Elantra in front of the house. It's, I mean, you got to use common sense when you look at stuff. And if it is sealed, then we all ought to be screaming when it finally comes out. And it's not going to come out. You see in all the motions to suppress and everything Ann is doing, it's all based around the story that is told in the probable cause affidavit. Yeah, Murphy told us in his bark, so he must have barked every time a car went around the corner or parked. I mean, I know you're just being silly, but this is what I mean is we kind of do get lost off in the sauce. Like you got that Pavarotti showing you how 3 other people did it or whatever the fuck he's trying to do. You got all these other people looking at videos from different locations and extrapolating who they're going to tell you did it. And you got all of this chaos going around, and everybody's accepted, for the most part, including myself, we've accepted the story given to us by the cop. And even though myself and many others have always questioned this story, the real questions need to come down to what can you actually show with evidence is real. Showing me a car driving around that house has got nothing to do with nothing. unless driving a car around that house around those times of nights is a crime, explain to me in plain English how you connect that particular vehicle's movements to the murders that took place in that house. Where's the connectivity to that other than you making the statement? And your statements are all about we believe, my experience. And this is where, again, these are questions that I think initially dragged me into them, but like most people, I've accepted this argument about the 11 to 13 or the 14 to 16. And the real truth of the matter is, and this is unquestionable, is there is absolutely nothing that can show us without doubt that that car is involved in the crime. No, I appreciate it. I was in your channel earlier. You did a premiere there, 12 Gauge. You were in there. I saw your premiere earlier where you were showing PTSD stuff. That's what I mean. That stuff is good stuff to share with people. But for us to sit back, so let's just guess that let's just go with this. The folks that are all on board that Brian Koberger did it. Do any of them have any piece of evidence in any of the court hearings that show any car was used by the person that committed those heinous acts inside that home? And the universal answer can only be no. No. We have video images of a car driving around, but let me just say this. We absolutely have proof of cars involved in that crime scene that night. We have direct evidence, and I'm going to show you where that is, of cars involved in that crime scene that night. The direct evidence of that could be all three or any one of these. The delivery of what appeared to be a Domino's pizza. Thank you there. I think it was Lana that pointed that out. Okay. The delivery of a DoorDash order. These two items, especially the DoorDash order, are provable facts of an event that took place that can be verified. And we also have a person that dropped off the two young women on the third floor. Now, that's what I mean by a fact, that you can actually place something at a specific location where something tragic took place. But there is no evidence placing that car, other than being around the area. There's nothing that makes that car have anything at all to do with that crime, except for the thoughts inside of a policeman's head. That's it. Outside of that policeman's head, there is no evidence to support that car's participation in any crime. And we should have been questioning this, including me. I'm kind of mad at myself for not making this point earlier, because this point is significant. When you go to convict or even to get probable cause to arrest an American, you have to have the likelihood that this person committed the crime. Not just some story from a policeman that's adding 1 and 1 together and coming up with 6. Sometimes he might be adding 1 and 1 that equals 2. But that doesn't matter, okay? That's not evidence. Unless the person that committed the crime comes forward and admits to the crime as you've suggested, or admits to the crime and then corrects what you've suggested. That would be acceptable. But the perpetrator can only do that. Telling me that there was a car on video at different hours of the night doesn't tell me that that car had anything to do with the crime. You told us that the crime started at 4 o'clock and ended at 4:20. That car never showed up in your video from what we've been able to ascertain until 4:07 a.m. And it left at 4:20 at a high rate of speed. But that could have been a boyfriend that was rejected from entering to one of those apartments. There could have been anything. Could have been some geeker smoking fucking drugs in his car. Could have been somebody hiding back there on the phone, or having brought a prostitute or some hooker with him over there. You just, my point is, you can ascribe any activity you want to that car, and you're in no better place to prove it than what is written in the PCA. And that is a problem. It's always been a problem. Nobody knows how entry was gained. Nobody knows how the perp, as they claim, was able to access that property, whether it be through walking, jogging, crawling, driving, parachuting like that stupid screwball Crime Circus points out, jumping from a tree limb like that fucking moron Crime Circus points out. See, there's nothing, folks, to connect that to that crime other than the policeman saying so. What's another piece of information they use to obtain? And I think people are being boondoggled here. I think we're all being bullshitted. I mean, policemen are all saying, oh, that was enough to arrest them, because you guys are just, unfortunately, you're part of the system, and that system is corrupt. And whether you're an active participation of making it corrupt, or you're just a person that works and follows the corrupt rules, okay, you're both in the same boat as far as I'm concerned. And that's just the way it's got to be, right? Guilt by association. Sorry. So, you've got them claiming his phone stopped reporting to a network. And you're telling me that that's indicative of a criminal turning off a phone. Well, you can't prove that. There's nothing to show that. There's no evidence that that's what this young man did. It is. It's like the Twilight Zone met Bermuda Triangle. Thank you, Grant. And I want to stick with the car. I welcome anybody at all, to show how that car that they track on video was involved in that crime. Because if you can't make that connection, then I don't care if Brian had fucking a car lot full of 2011 to 2013 fucking Elantras. I don't care if he had every dealership in the country that only sold 2011 to 2016 Elantras. You must show how the occupant or occupants within that vehicle, who you've claimed weren't suspects, okay? You've made that public claim. You can lie, okay. How that they actually were part of the crime that took place in that home. You're telling me the people that we know they went to the house. We know specifically that during the hours of 4 a.m. and 4:20 a.m., that during that exact period of time, you know who went in that house that drove a car. You know who that is. And I'm going to say, I wouldn't be surprised, folks, if that Linda Lane video is that car. Right? Hey, Lollipop Girl. There's the only provable vehicles involved in that home that night are two. I'm going to go on the outside and say three, whoever the Domino person was, if in fact the Domino's was delivered that night. And if it was, I suggest it was earlier in the evening, or earlier in the AM hours, if at all. But let's say that it was done, as Lana's pointed out. Like I mean, a lot of people are making leaps and assumptions. She's backing it up with imagery and I think a receipt. And so, okay, I'll take that at face value, right? But I don't support the idea that you can make up a story as a policeman based on facts that you've determined mean one potential thing and one potential thing only, and not be able to support that with hard evidence. You can't suspect Brian Kohlberger, just as in all fairness, folks, just because criminals turn their phone off to mask, okay, to mask their location prior to or during the committing of a crime. No matter how relevant and how sensible that sounds, there's two problems in that PCA with that statement. A, there is no criminal history on Brian Kohlberger. That's A. It's number one. Especially no criminal history that would have anything to do with what happened in that home, right? We can all agree with that, right? So he turned off his phone, according to you, to mask his criminal behavior, his criminal intent. That's a great theory. That's a great conspiracy, like all these nut jobs on the internet are doing with these conspiracies and reflections and sounds and I want to write this down because I want to get to the issue of sound. Hang on here. Sound, boy, sound off, boy. So the story that they told is potentially possible. Let's just say, forget the potentially. The story in the PCA is possible. It's possible. But there isn't a single minute, microscopic, or any information at all that makes it real. It's possible that we can travel faster than the speed of light, but there isn't any proof or any indication or any microscopic fact that shows that we're going to do that or can do that. It's theoretically possible. That's why they call it the theory of gravity and the theory of relativity. These are theories that have immense implications in the way we live our lives, right? So theories do have their place, but the Constitution doesn't say that you could theorize a guy behind bars. We know a horrific murder took place. Your theories of before, during, and after the crime, which have thus far shown to be completely unprovable. There isn't a single solitary piece of evidence to support Brian Kohlberger turned off his phone, that Brian Kohlberger intentionally did what he did with his phone, whether he turned it off, no matter what he did, that he did that with the intent to commit a quadruple homicide. You have no evidence to support that. Yes, you do have a quadruple homicide. But whatever acts that Brian Kohlberger took that night, wherever he drove to, whatever vehicle he was in, there is no fact to put any of that at the house. Zero. In the original arrest warrant, charging him with a quadruple homicide. That's important to know. It's important to know, too, when you start to examine and review the evidence that's labeled DNA. DNA doesn't even mean you were in that home. DNA can't prove you committed that crime. DNA can't do any of that, especially in this circumstance where it's transfer DNA. Hey, man with no arms, you don't got to high-five me. That's okay. Cripples are welcome in here, folks. Obesity, cripples, retards, you're all welcome. Bring it. Even 12 gauge can come in here. I mean, come on. What kind of a show do you think this is? You think we got standards? Oh, yeah, man. I dated and banged out on a one-arm woman. She had a prosthetic arm. That was pretty hot. Just nail that shit to the headboard and get busy. Anyway, back to the topic. Man with no arms. Oh, my. What are you doing? Your balls itch. Jesus, man with no arms. It's just crazy, man. Holy shit. And I'll keep posting that link. Anybody's welcome to come in and explain and the best that they understand it. How those two particular situations, we'll stick with just those two. What may or may not have happened with the phone and any vehicle in that area that's mentioned in the PCA. Neither one of those two arguments or those two statements can be proven accurate. You have to accept on face value that they're accurate. Well, proving somebody and taking their life and proving them guilty in the American justice system, right, requires more than me just having to believe your story. You have to support that with some corroborating fact. And the idea that the DNA does that is a bit outrageous and a bit ridiculous, because everything that they've shared with us about what may have happened that night, what Brian Kohlberger's part in what may, and not what may have happened, but what did happen, and his role in that is all based on information that does everything but put him at that house. The only thing you can say is all this ancillary evidence is supportive and shows that the DNA was put there that night. But the catch-22 with that is that single source, one sample of DNA, regardless of where it is found. And in many cases on transfer DNA, folks, the transfer DNA was removed directly from the victim, and those cases were overturned. In some of those transfer DNA cases, the DNA was removed from the weapon that committed the crime and committed the murder, and those people were acquitted. I think that we've gotten some attention, a lot of attention to the DNA, but I don't think a lot of people have looked at how susceptible transfer DNA is in helping you misunderstand what you're looking at. Its presence isn't proof of a crime. Now, if it was his saliva or his semen, and it was amongst the victims, or his blood, that's highly suggestive of time and place of it being put there, right? If you found half a dozen transfer DNAs within that house that are connected to the crime scenes, and they all belong to Brian. That would also tell a story, because now you can establish not when they occurred, right? Because DNA can't tell you when you were there, but it can tell you that you, in some cases, were there. So they don't have a case if they don't use the DNA or the IgG. I don't think they have a case at all. As a matter of fact, I think the IgG is probably the most destructive thing that could ruin the case. I don't think people appreciate the quandary that you're in when you take an unknown sample of DNA, regardless of the form that it was collected in, and just turn that into a genealogy site. You don't even have any idea how many similar hits you're going to get on that DNA. And if you stop when you get to like an 84% tip, an 84% connection that this strand of DNA in your jar has an 84% connection to this DNA in your system, that is not proof that that person's related to Brian Kohberger. A lot of people don't understand that. They just don't understand how DNA is done. And the worst part is that when you have an unidentified sample, you could literally get thousands of hits that connect to that sample. And of those thousands, most of them are useless, or they'll lead you down the wrong path. But you must analyze and go through the connections. And I just don't see how a statistical analysis in the end is of what we know to be transfer DNA is enough to kill this guy, take his life, and convict him of the crime. Especially when you can do nothing that shows without a doubt this person was at that home. I also suggest that it's likely to me, in my observations, that they were given names or a name. And if it's just a name that they were given, but they have other means, I would assume digital evidence. See, there is no digital evidence. There is no digital evidence being argued or asked to be suppressed. What you need to observe, 12 gauge, is that the motion to suppress is all based on the probable cause and actually the indictment. Everything she's going after is part of what she's suppressing. She's leaving nothing out. If there were digital evidence that you and I didn't know about, there'd be a motion to suppress. And there would be maybe not a direct indicator of what that is, but that motion would exist. Even if that motion was a motion to suppress, sealed digital evidence, sealed witness evidence, sealed, you see? Why would she want to suppress it? Because you want to suppress everything that they use to claim that your particular defendant is guilty. You put it all in there. The entire story should be suppressed unless you can make a direct one-on-one connection between Brian in the car and the car being at that house. Their argument at this point, take everything away. Their only argument is transfer DNA. They can't support that knife sheath belonged to Brian Kohberger. Okay? They can't support that Brian Kohberger entered that home through a sliding glass door and left through the sliding glass door. The victims in the home that survived cannot identify Kohberger and did not identify Kohberger during the commission or leaving the crime. So you can't put him in the home. And you're trying to rely on transfer DNA as your evidence he was in there. But that's not evidence of anybody's presence during the time of the crime. I mean, for every woulda, if, coulda, woulda, shoulda, there's the opposite side for the defense. But the defense is standing on pretty high ground here. So my client turned his phone off to mask his location. Yes. Where's the evidence of that? Well, that's what criminals do. We're not talking about the general world of criminality. We're talking about a case here, this case. How can you show that Kohberger did that with the intent to mask his location? And the officer is going to be buried. He's going to say, well, just based on the totality of the circumstances, that's what I think he did, or I assume he did. And then you just tear the guy apart. There's just, okay. Where's the evidence that car that you've listed based on video surveillance, can you show direct evidence that car and an occupant or occupants were inside that home? Well, the DNA. Well, the DNA doesn't prove the presence of that car's involvement. In other words, even though there's a car there, 12 gauge, there's still nothing to say that Kohberger didn't walk in that back door and do this. As I showed before, there's a parking lot 850 feet away. You say he turned his phone off to commit a crime. He could have parked his car anywhere there wasn't a camera and jogged there and committed the crime. The car in the video is almost like wet toilet paper. I suggest you don't use it to wipe your ass. And I also suggest that the involvement of that vehicle is a theory. There's no evidence. The closest thing you have to evidence for that car isn't even evidence at all. Right? The evidence that they suggest supports the car's involvement is Dylan Morton's story and the timelines that they obtained from within the home. Now, that still doesn't mean the car was involved. You're saying the crime went from 4 to 4:20, and you've kept extending it now until 4:30. So that's chaotic. You said before it was from 3 to 4 a.m. I'll accept 3 to 4 a.m. could include 4 to 4:30 a.m. I'll give you that. I'll give the police latitude where latitude is deserved. But show how that car was involved. Well, at 4:20, it took off at a high rate of speed. Okay. Is that unusual? The cars never take off at a high rate of speed? I just strongly point out that probable cause needs to have some clear definition in the judicial process, and in fact, it does. And when you look at probable cause, the story that you tell needs to be supported by facts. Let me just give you an example. They proved this to you. It's not even me telling you this. The very police that charged Koberger with 4 homicides, they show you in their paperwork the importance of probable cause and having to make Brian Koberger appear to be the person that committed the crime. They do that when paperwork submitted to the court states that they originally thought the car to be an 11 to 13, but subsequently discovered that it could be an 11 to a 16. Now, that shows you the importance of probable cause. You see? They had to expand the years of that vehicle to include Brian Koberger. Why would they do that? Why would they've always said 20 up until the 20? I I think the only acceptable investigation that I would have spent all of my time and effort on to disprove what I would have focused on to find either that it was inclusive and inculpatory or it was disproved would be I would have to rule out in my mind that anybody that remained in that home wasn't directly involved with that crime. I can't accept that nobody in that home, and I'm not saying the 2 survivors, there could have been a third party that they were unaware of, but there's nothing that shows me that there was forced entry into any of those rooms that had locks on them. There wasn't any forced entry into the person that entered the property. That's a problem. That problem needs to have an answer. It needs to be sorted. How did they gain access to rooms that were what we suspect would be naturally locked in a home like that? To be very honest with you, I'll tell you, if you want to know what I really think happened here, I really think that this is connected to the university and to the drug cartels that are in that city, in that township. I think some way, shape, or form that house being off campus, okay, was a problem for the cartels. If in fact that house was involved with drug distribution and or had always been involved in drug distribution, but was being denied that courtesy now because of the occupants that were there. I don't suspect that this, or in fact that this was a crime of jealousy, as I described with Dylan and Bethany when I did that stream. You have to make things make sense. He turned off his car and there was a similar car driving around the property. That only makes sense in your mind. Makes sense to a group of 12 people to show that there is no doubt that in fact Mr. Kohlberger did perform this crime, that this action of the phone being turned off and this action of a car driving around that property at that particular time at night, that there's evidence showing that both of those actions are connected to the home. Don't leave it to me to assume you know what you're talking about, okay? Right? Don't leave me to assume that Brian did actually perform these things. Also, you got to pay attention to the defense's arguments, because the defense is making arguments that are becoming unarguable when it comes to the prosecution's ability to shoot it down. Why is there a pattern of dishonesty on the behalf of the government, but not on behalf of Brian Kohlberger? Has anybody ever come forward and shown you, okay, that that the motions filed by Ann were fake? There was no DNA present in his home, in his apartment, in his place of work, in his parents' house, and no explanation as to why none was found. Has anybody taken? Nope. There is no connection between Brian Kohlberger and the victims, electronically or otherwise. Has that ever been factually debunked? Nope, not at all. Yeah. What has the government done that's dishonest? First and foremost is A, Brian Kohlberger had 12 contacts with that cellular tower prior to the crime, and we are concerned that that was what he did to set the crime up. They never or was stalking him. That was completely debunked by the prosecution and government themselves. They completely debunked that, but yet that's in the accusatory documents, isn't it? Right? Then the crime is still a crime. The crime, as far as I can see, is unsolved. Inasmuch as you cannot, as my title says, show me information that makes that car factually part of that crime, 12 gauge, and you can't do it. That's the standard that you're supposed to meet in court. That's the standard you're supposed to meet. Somewhere along that application to arrest this guy, you have to have definitive evidence, and transfer DNA is not definitive evidence of anything. Not remotely connected to placing anybody anywhere at any specific time or day or night, or in fact, because of its very nature of being transfer DNA, is more indicative that somebody he knew was around that knife. Somebody he didn't know, that was, for whatever reason, at the same gas pump, at the same store, at the same school, No. That's the problem with transfer DNA. Like the big famous case, Amanda Knox in Italy was convicted on transfer DNA. It was later overturned. That's where I say that this is where the case lacks. It lacks solid, undisputable evidence that Brian Kohlberger committed this crime. Yeah, they had to dispute the stalking. It wasn't an allegation. It was an inference. And everything, what I want to point out by bringing that up, 12 gauges, everything in their case is an inference that they frame in a way to give you a conclusion. It's not my conclusion, and I will not accept the conclusion that an American citizen's phone that doesn't connect to a network it's none of my business why, first of all. But that in and of itself, I can't conclude shows this man had the intent to go kill people. I know there's dead people in the area, but that act in and of itself, I can't make that leap. I refuse to. And so should everybody else. Not because I want you to agree with me, but because you're an American citizen. Your ability to drive at any time of night, at any day, at any area, on any street, shouldn't even be a question of whether we're allowed to do that or not. The question should be, when does your driving around become a probable cause issue to be placed in an affidavit to charge you with 12 or 4 homicides? So the 12 times prior and then after the murders, and no other pings in that area. Well, he left town with his father shortly after these crimes. Just remember. Also, when you go look at the actual times of when those 12 took place, somebody pointed out to me it looked like, and you could make the argument, that he got paid every other week. Maybe he was going down to spend his money or get his money or cash his check or go, you follow me? Go shopping. His debit card got loaded every other week. And so my point is, those 12 trips are bullshit. But they wrote a story so that the reader would come from that story. He stalked them, or he did this to set up the crime. You see? And that's where that's where a PCA, there has to be something, 12 gauge, in a probable cause arrest. You have probable cause to search somebody's car. Believe it or not, that can't be because your dog sniffing dog you let him out of the car on the traffic stop and it smelled dope. That isn't probable cause. The Supreme Court has ruled that. Probable cause isn't just the cop decides he wants to do something, bros. I can interpret that phone going off and this guy driving a similar car is highly suspicious and enough for me to actually bring you in and detain you up to whatever the state allows, 72 hours. So it's absolutely enough to investigate the guy, but to use that exact terminology and language that points to a conclusion that none of those acts actually can be proven. You can't prove these are allegations. You can't prove that was Brian in that car. You can't even prove that that's Brian's car. And based on what we've heard so far, we now should understand that the car was identified and is still continuing to be identified as a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra white. They didn't. I'm sorry, 12 gauge. It's too obvious to me that you can't, even if you were to put Brian's 14 to 16, how can you show me that the occupants of that vehicle were involved in that crime? And you just can't do it. And I think you need to be able to do that. You need to show somebody's physical presence at that crime, either through direct evidence that's direct evidence that's 100% connected to the crime and the times that you allege. If I found your fingerprints on a beer mug, okay, on top of the refrigerator, just like DNA, 12 gauge, the fingerprints on that beer mug absolutely have no way to show me when you were there or when you were not there. They could have set him free at the grand jury hearing. Well, but they lied at the grand jury hearing. See, this is what she's trying to point out, 12 gauge. A grand jury here's how a grand jury was designed to work. And it's been going on ever since America was founded. A grand jury is a jury of your peers up to 18, generally 6 to 12. That grand jury, their decision is supposed to be based on if this were presented to them in the court of law, they would vote to convict. That's what a grand jury is supposed to be. You're not supposed to be able to indict ham sandwiches. We as Americans are just dumb fucks. We should not allow that. We should speak out against that. If you're going to indict somebody, you need direct evidence, okay? That's so direct that you can't even imagine how a defense attorney is going to explain that. And then you decide, well, based on what I'm hearing, this person had to have done it. I vote to indict. Voting to indict is almost exactly the same standard as to vote guilty at a trial. That's what a process of indicting people is supposed to be. It's been turned into this jack back fucking water jerk off idea that you can, and everybody laughs and we snicker. No. When you're stuck in I said this before, I was part of a racketeering case, an ancillary part, not a direct part. Okay? Listen, no, the prosecution or the prosecution could dismiss the case at any time. You're right about that. But once you're caught in the judicial process and the prosecutor is seeking to prosecute you, then every process that's required to get you in front of a jury of your peers must be adhered to. The judge can only stop these proceedings, okay? Even if he thinks that Kohlberger's innocent, the judge doesn't necessarily have the requirement to stop the hearings. That's to a jury of their peers. It's been assigned to be adjudicated in a court of law with a jury of his peers with the penalty of death attached to the accusation. So I don't even think I think what a judge can do is what Ann is trying to show you now is submit, okay, apply for a Franks hearing. We don't know if she gets it or not. Apply for the Franks hearing. Ask to suppress. And it's based on the actions of the judge at that point. And his opinion as to whether this then the prosecution will say, Yeah, we're gonna hold back on the charges at this point. They call it prosecutorial. I forget what it is. It gives them a leeway to charge or not charge. So let's say the judge assigns and agrees with the motions to suppress many pieces of evidence. And that's it. Now you go to trial and you can't use that evidence. That's all that means. Her motions, even if the judge agrees on every single one of them, does not give him the right to dismiss this case. He might want to bring counsel in chambers and have a word with that crack smoking Santa Claus known as Bill Thompson. And he may want to drag in Ann and say your work was done exceptionally well. And Mr. Thompson, what do you want to do at this point? Do you really plan on going forward, sir? So the judge can influence, but in the end, it's the prosecution's choice as to whether to prosecute Brian Koberger or not. And that includes even if she won every single argument in the suppression hearing, every single one of them, even with all of that stuff removed, right? Even if she suppresses the DNA, it doesn't matter. The prosecution has to make that decision. That's true. That's what I mean. But just be aware that that's all the judge can do. And just so folks realize, a judge's main purpose, the reason that we have judges, folks, is because they're supposed to ensure that your constitutional line, the line the government cannot cross, is adhered to. Okay? I don't know if they should lift the seal and gag. I think the seal and gag is pretty self-explanatory. I don't suspect the seal and gag is going to have something in there, okay, that's going to say, look, here's Brian. There's just no way it's going to be in there. It would have been, this is the other point. The point about how important probable cause is, when you read the subsequent filings and the arguments of the prosecution against Ann's pointing out that this stuff doesn't reach that level, their arguments are either they expand upon the truth or they try to hide the truth. When she asked that one policeman on the stand, that Brett Payne, who's the chief investigator, do any of the videos that you have in totality, do any of them affirmatively show Brian Koberger or Brian Koberger's car? And he says no. No. Then why? You have to ask the question. Then why the fuck are you bringing it up when you're applying for warrants? No, I don't know that she failed the court. I think what happened was the court took on face value what the prosecutor files in an indictment is what the prosecutor files, and there is the outcome of the case will determine whether they go back to this, whether they end up back in court suing these people. But no, I think that the accusatory instrument is taken at face value, and there is no defense attorney present at an indictment. That's why indictments are very important. If the indictment has language that we later determined that the car could be an 11 to a 16, if that statement is in the indictment, then any judge that reads that would say, well, it makes sense they're onto this guy, whether he did it or not, because he drives a 15. And the problem with that statement is the FBI agent has already said that he's identified two different cars, essentially, and two different videos, one around the house and one from somewhere else. The one from somewhere else is a 14 to 16. The one around the house is an 11 to 13. This is from the FBI themselves. So when you combine that statement to include, we later determined it could be 11 to a 16, that's not what the FBI said. That's not what they're saying. Not even close. So that is a misrepresentation to the court. And you can argue as a cop, that's the way I thought it was. Okay. But in fact, the fact of the matter is that isn't factual. So that indictment, now getting all of this discovery, can she go back? I don't know. I think they should have waited, to be very honest with you. They should have waited until these hearings and got on the record statements of fact made by the arresting officer and the investigators, right? Police cannot allow in an accusatory instrument. They cannot lie in an accusatory instrument. They cannot lie in a court of law. A policeman can lie to the public, okay? But they cannot lie in an accusatory instrument, 12 gauge. They cannot lie while under oath. No, they cannot lie. They cannot write up an affidavit that denies you your freedom put lies in there. Sorry, doesn't work like that, 12 gauge. I don't know what classes you're in. You can't do it, brother. Not saying, well, let me rephrase that. You can do that if you're a criminal policeman. No one's saying the cop can't do it. Physically, they certainly can and have. We all know that. But the way the system is set up, your lies are part of an investigation. Your lies are part of a statement you make to a potential suspect or a potential witness. Of course you can lie. Right? When you're interrogating somebody, you can lie your ass off. Your co-defendant's already told me you did it. Blah, 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 blah. You could do that all the time. Yeah, but there is specific changes on that vehicle that would allow. This is why it's such an important point. Warning label. An 11 to 13's rear marker lights are uniquely placed. A 14 to 16, they moved and they got bigger. They're higher up and further out to the outside corners of the bumper. This is why I always stuck with the FBI's description of the car, because the points that you need to see, okay, are so specific that if visible to the observer, you can exactly say what year, make, model that car is. Literally, you literally can get to the minutia there. And so here's what would have happened. If the policeman that observed the video could only say it was an Elantra, he might likely have been better served to say an 11 to a 19, because they all had the same body panels. The only differences were in the trim, the fascia in the front, the bumper in the back, interior stuff, maybe engine options, rims. So they were cosmetic changes. However, every 3 years, new cosmetic changes were added. Therefore, you could identify an 11 to 13 unquestionably from any other Elantra from 13 to 19. And the same goes from 19 backwards. And that's why when the policemen and the cops kept coming out with the 11 to 13, nobody could convince me the FBI officer was wrong. As a matter of fact, he's actually confirmed that he wasn't wrong. And into after the crime. The other Elantra he slides into after the crime. No, you're not. You're so caught up on that Elantra being Brian Koberger's at that house, you're not really paying attention to the hearings, 12 gauge. The FBI is firm in their description. The car around the home was 11 to 13. The car and the other imagery given to them, where we don't know where it actually came from. We could suppose, or we could guess. But two things, right? The statement, it was on the wrong road at the wrong time, going the wrong way. Your buddy Jeff's most famous fucking thing to hear that he ignores. That means that the 14 to 16 was identified away from the crime scene. Let me make this simple for you. Let's suppose that what they saw on a different camera at a different time going the wrong way was a white Hyundai Elantra 11 to 13. I suppose that then you should be able to make the obvious leap that they could be, not that they are, but that they could be the same vehicle. And that's the best part about this car and this whole story. That car, or whatever car you got on video, every car that you got on video that didn't pull out immediately, but went and parked, could be a party to this crime. Would that be a fair statement? On video that night, we caught several cars going around the building. 4 of them went around the building and never came back. Any and all of those cars may be involved with this crime. You could make that assumption. But the officer's making assumptions that have no way to be proven. He assumed Brian's behavior with the phone. He assumes that was Brian in that car, or it was Brian's car, even worse. And these are assumptions that aren't verifiable through evidence. Yeah, I don't. He is blocked. Fuck that guy. Yeah, I have no interest in talking with Jeff. He hears the same things other people hear, but because he's already decided, and because a lot of other people have decided who did it, okay, then there's nothing. But I don't care if there's 10,000 cameras in evidence. Most of you don't realize that surveillance cameras at night don't collect 12 hours of data. They're triggered. They're triggered by movement, just like your lights are in your house. There's 10 cameras that saw a Elantra. There's 10 cameras that saw an Elantra. None of those cameras that they took the film and video from identify it as Brian Koberger or the car that Brian Koberger owns. It's already been admitted to by Brett Payne. There was no ambiguity in her question. She's still trying to get the video that the FBI used to determine that it was an 11 or 13. And this is the best part of all. This is really why I say, if anybody is doing any bullshit here, it isn't Koberger's team, it's the state. Do you know, and we all know this to be true, that there was a problem with the audio from that, and that they gave some audio and some video of that particular car. And it's likely, based on the behavior I've witnessed from the police, it's likely that camera that was 50 feet away heard quite a bit more than just a thud and somebody crying. Okay? So let's not go about who did it yet. Let me make this point, 12 gauge. These cameras that you guys, especially Jeff, are masturbating to like their evidence. Why is it that they could catch a moan and a thump, but not the crime as it took place, not the screams or the struggles? Why is it? And this is what I think is the problem with the video of the car they're saying drove around that house. It's not that the car is a proof of Koberger. It's not that the car was in that neighborhood as proof of Koberger. It's that particular image in that video that not only was identified by an expert as something other than Koberger's car, but the audio that must go along with that car. If it contradicts Dylan in any way, if it contradicts Dylan, we got big problems here. And yet that was the main reason they kept that away from Ann. Quit with Koberger. Like I said, you're welcome to come up here if you want, 12 gauge. I've given you the link 40 fucking times. I'm not going to yell at you or cause an argument. I don't know what you're afraid of. Listen, the car, as far as if I was an attorney, I would get that stricken. I'd get that. There's nothing to connect the car to the crime. Even if Brian's got blood inside that house and semen because he did something like that, then that still doesn't connect it to the crime unless he says, yeah, that's how I got there. That car can be completely separate from the crime. No, you don't got to build the case from the car. That's the best part, Grant. You don't need to do that. But the coincidence here, okay? The coincidence here is that Dylan Morton's statements, okay, according to the police's interpretation of her statements, make that car part of the crime. You know, so that's the other problem for these guys. So back to where we said, the Elantra has zero connection to the murders. It just does. If it's even an Elantra. But I accept the idea of the FBI. It's an 11 to 13 Elantra. The other imagery that they showed him, he determined it to be a 14 to 16. He did not make the statement, well, the car that was at that crime could be an 11 to through 16. That is not what the FBI's determination has been. They've identified from two different videos the same model car from two different years. So if you take that out, what you end up with is IGG work. So take all of that out. He drove south of Moscow. He drove north of Idaho. He did this. He did that. Take all of that and throw in the fucking garbage. What are you left with? You're left with a DNA sample that was used to discover whether the person was in their CODIS system. Is that the right word? CODIS? And found that that person's DNA sample that you have, a minimal sample of transfer DNA, has nothing in the system it connects to. You then send it to a private laboratory that at that time was not certified for the work that they did. And that's why the FBI, I suspect, jumped in. But you send it to a private laboratory to take the sample that you have and amplify it through proprietary software. That particular process, especially if they were certified, and I think this is why Ann might have a chance of getting into that particular process, which is protected because it's proprietary, was then taken by the FBI, okay? And they then did a genealogy makeup on it. The question that now here's what has to be asked. When the sample was sent to Othram and Othram began work, were they given the name of a suspect? Because that would highly prejudice the observers of the statistical connections between him and any DNA and any database. You would have a person to look for. If you give me your DNA with no identity, 12 gauge, it's not that I can go build a family tree because I don't know who you are. Who the fuck are you? So it's more than trying to just connect it to relatives. It's in fact that you don't know who this person is. And when you put someone's DNA into a database, there's a reason they call it a tree, right? And even Ann said that in the motion when she's arguing against the IGG. They could have had hundreds or even more of potential suspects with that one sample that they had to amplify. And that is an absolute fact, 12 gauge. That's how it works. There's no way to get around that. Because human beings share so many of the same DNA markers, and they're looking for 20 markers. When I went for a paternity test, right? There were 12 markers they looked to see if you're connected to the child. And I literally connected to 5 of them. I don't even know who this person is. Yet 5 of my DNA markers connected to this baby. How'd that work out? And you have to understand that to understand how IGG is done. You have to understand that it's all a statistical analysis. Basically, here's what that's saying. That out of the 12 markers, right? I was like 40-something% the chance of being the father. That's how it works, 12 gauge. It's not me making it up. It's a real life experience. You know? Where's risk management skills? Suzanne, who's Suzanne? No connection to the VIX, no stalking, no drive test around the house. No one had ever seen him at the house. No biological of any of his properties, car outside. All of that stuff would have been important to make another connection to Brian Koberger. The story they're telling is circumstantial, but they can't close the loop on the circumstantial allegations. Okay, they just can't do that. And because they're not able to close that loop, in my opinion, a judge should not have signed off on probable cause. They just shouldn't have done that. They should have discovered what Suzanne posted. They should have discovered that through a prior investigation pre-arrest, right? No, I'm not having a problem with what you're saying there, 12 gauge. I think it's entertaining. I think some of those things, especially because I know you get a lot of people in your stream that they're hung up on Brian did it. But they can't connect the dots on these pieces of information that have been supplied to us, the observer, that can be corroborated. Yet the arguments that Ann makes are corroborated. So when the defense is getting it right and the prosecution's like trying to scramble and hide and seal and tell stories to the public, how many people in the media ran around telling you Brian Koberger, who was that? Was that Gray Hughes or some other jerk-off fucking author out there that drove around fucking Idaho like some fucking twit and told you he was parked over here looking through the trees? This fucking jerk-off. How about the guy that found a glove? That guy. Listen, man. And that guy they took at face value the inferences, the theory that the police laid forward in a probable cause affidavit that Koberger stalked that house, if not an individual that lived in it. And they ran that theory and drove all around fucking that area, even got kicked off the property, right? These fucking jerk-offs out here looking for clicks without even giving it a second thought. Now, where are they? Where are they when Bill Thompson comes forward and Judge comes forward and says, none of that's true, right? But their answers contradict their accusations. Do you understand? 12 gauge? I agree. The defense is putting out motions saying, how do you connect my client to that house? Where did you get his name? Why is his name involved? Then they come out and they got to respond to that. You say that he drove here, 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 and there. Can you show us how you came to that conclusion? Can you show us what you gave the grand jury when you came to that conclusion? I didn't save it. What do you mean you didn't save it? That's what I'm saying. If you really want to look at these cases, you got to look at the actions of your government and what they're doing with their accusations. And I am not saying Kohlberger didn't do it. I'm just not saying that. I can't say that enough over and over and over again. I don't know who did it. I could come up with strong theories just like anyone else out here. Right? Officer Tater Tot is inept at the very least. He's a big ass, most certainly misled the magistrate. I think he misled the magistrate too. I think that's what part of the Franks hearing is. Right? Imagine the FBI saying, no, I never indicated it could have been 11 to 16 around that house. The images they showed me, the video they gave me, showed it to be an 11 to 13, and here's why. If there's other imagery that's supposed to be around that house, they never showed that to me. They showed me imagery from such and such a place, right? What up, Vance Savant? Rare daytime. Yeah, and I got a little bit of time, and then I got an alarm set to shut me up. So you guys consider yourselves fucking, you're going to be saved by the bell. I don't want to argue guilt or innocence. Because again, it blinds you from the small things that matter. When your whole point is to take a piece of information and incorporate that into your view of guilt, it fits. Be good there, 12 gauge. Be good. I could accept it, then turn it off the phone. Yep, he did that because he didn't want people to know where he was going. Yeah. That car driving around the house, that has to be him because there's 4 dead bodies in that house, and they're showing he already turned off the phone to hide what he was doing. Yeah. Oh, yeah, now they're telling me he drove around the property 12 times prior. Yeah, I could see all that. Yeah. How do you beat that in court? Well, you could beat that in court when you put a fucking brain on someone's head and have them ask certain fucking questions. Right? It's not that hard to ask questions that should be answered with evidence. It should be clearly answered with evidence. And it's got to disturb people that Petri dish. How long did the media run around telling us that car? How many of these genius YouTubers that got him guilty screamed that car was going to be a Petri dish of evidence? And I thought, well, if it is, it is. And I just let it play out. It didn't change my view that up until that point, I didn't believe that there was any evidence connecting him to that particular crime in the circumstances that they outlined to accuse him. And then when the information came back that there was no DNA in that car and no way to explain the lack thereof, you got to ask yourself, well, how could that be possible? But these idiots that ran around saying he committed the crime in a shower curtain. I don't know what kind of criminals you people are out here, but you're not very good ones. And if you were ever arrested for a crime and worked through the system to a trial, okay, you'll see how the system works. It's much different than what you see on TV. It's not that quick. It's not that clean. It's much more complicated. And that's the question of all. Where's their proof of anything making Brian Kohlberger the committer of 4 multiple homicides? Where? And I'm sorry if you keep coming back to the DNA and think that proves your point. That DNA is not enough to convict anybody of that crime, especially because of what DNA it is, especially because of what they did and how they handled that evidence. And so here's my question. If once you amplified that sample, where's the original DNA that you found? How can I be so sure that your amplification didn't alter it in some way? I think she's entitled to see how these labs do what they're doing. I think an outside expert that has to sign a non-disclosure agreement, an outside expert that has to sign a confidential agreement, okay, should be allowed to look at the processes of the software under which they're amplifying DNA samples. When else have you ever heard something like this done, folks, where they amplified some tiny piece of evidence to get more information from it? Maybe they put it under a microscope and all they amplified was their observability. But when you're amplifying DNA, it's an amplification of the sample itself. It's not a bigger fucking microscope to look at the DNA, unlike you would do with a bullet or a gun barrel or a knife or an earring or a fucking fingernail. They're not altering a fingernail or amplifying a fingernail when they find that at a crime. They're just putting it under a better electron microscope to observe it and to make connections to that and a victim or that or a perpetrator. Why is DNA allowed to be tampered with, is what I suggest. Under what fucking rule do we have that allows science to get in and fuck with and amplify some sample? And that, my folks, is a question that I'm sure Ann is going crazy about. You had a sample that couldn't identify an individual as it was on its own. And so you sent it to Othram to amplify it and then start building a family tree off that amplified sample. Oh, that sounds fucking fair to me. Ooh, I'm glad to be an American. Not, okay. I don't like it. You shouldn't have to do anything. The evidence should speak for itself. And in cases where it doesn't speak for itself, then it isn't evidence, is it? There isn't evidence there, then is there? That's the reason it's inadmissible in court. It's very, but even worse than being unreliable, most courts will not take transfer DNA. Most prosecutors won't use transfer DNA unless there's enough transfer DNA in enough places associated with the crime that makes it more than likely the person was there during the commission of the crime, right? One errant sample, regardless of where it's found, one sample on this one murder case, his transfer DNA was found on her breast. There's been cases where the guy's semen has been found in the victim. But they had sex before the victim was killed. He didn't kill her. DNA is a very, very, very fucking bad road for us to all be going down without understanding it and without demanding there be some fucking rules surrounding it, because you're talking about the elimination of a human being's life. Bang, shoot him. And I'm sorry, I don't think that any American citizen should come down to that. Now, I think in the totality of your presentation, DNA does have a meaning in this case, in any case. But when the totality of your information can't place Kohberger in the home, and your argument is the DNA does that, then I'm telling you, you're a fucking twit. You are literally a twit that's been programmed not to think. You're building a case based on circumstantial evidence everywhere except with the DNA. Therefore, the circumstances have to support the presence of the DNA unequivocally. They can't be circumstantial. The DNA itself is circumstantial evidence. A lot of people don't understand that. DNA is circumstantial evidence. Period. End of fucking story. So if you're going to make a circumstantial case using circumstantial evidence, then the rest of your story better be completely verifiable and not circumstantial. As far as an American, that's what I would accept in a juror. I don't want it to be he coulda, woulda, shoulda turned his phone off to hide his location. I don't want it to be a coulda, woulda, shoulda. Maybe, I don't know, maybe he made a fucking U-turn. Okay? Jeff H., you fucking twit. Maybe he made a U-turn. No, that's not acceptable. And you're doing all of these loops and jumps and fucking jumping jacks and backflips because you're aware of a presence of transfer DNA. If there wasn't a presence of transfer DNA, not a one of you people would buy this kid's involvement. Not a fucking one of you. You'd be paying attention to everything the police are saying. But the minute you heard those three letters DNA, your fucking head shut down. Whatever little fucking hamster wheel you got running around in that head came to a dead stop. And you started singing the songs the police told you to sing. The prosecutor told you to sing. And so you've been singing them fucking songs and strumming your fucking guitar, you fucking twit. Never questioning what was right in front of your fucking nose. How does a completely undamaged property and a quadruple homicide, how the fuck can that even face a reality check? What do you mean they didn't kick in the fucking door or pry the fucking lock open? What are you talking about? How did he get into two girls' locked rooms? How did he get into a locked house? Dylan had the presence of mind to close and lock her door. Oh, really? Dylan's the only one in there that knows how to lock a door? Apparently, she didn't come in through the sliding door last, or that would have been locked. Maybe they left it open. Maybe they did it. It defies fucking logic. You have patterns when you live. You all know that. What the fuck do you do when you walk in your house? I'll tell you what I do. I walk up to where my little shoe area is, and I take my shoes off, and I take my fucking keys off out of my pocket. I take my sunglasses off, and I set them on the little table I built just for that purpose. I then cross the room, empty my pocket, which usually has vast sums of fucking money in it, okay? And credit cards that give me access to even vaster sums of money. And I slide it underneath a Suzy Q fucking box from Hostess. filled with change. I then remove my outer coat, put that on a hanger, which is a step away, and then go about my fucking day. And I do it over and over and over again. The fuck? How many of you people run into a shower and only then decide you should have taken your clothes off first? I don't understand people. Certain things we all do. It's universal. We all breathe. We all eat. We all shit. We all do a lot of repetitive things. What do you do when you get in your car? Do you carry your luggage into the front seat and then decide, yeah, I'm going to put it in the trunk? I guess you could. Chances are carrying that luggage will lead you to your fucking trunk, for God's sakes. So I don't understand. How is that? Based on what we know, there's no physical assault against the home. There's no mention, there's no discussion of forced entry into either of those bedrooms. There's no evidence, no proof of any forced entry into the sliding glass door, or even in fact that the person came in that way. The only reason we pay attention to the sliding door is because that's what these cops are telling us happened. But they themselves cannot prove the access point of the criminal. And how do we know that? Because they spent their whole time with a fucking team in windbreakers, coughing and sneezing all over that fucking house, looking at outdoor windows, looking at other doors. What, right? How about that fucking drip drop, that stupid crime circus fucking twit, telling us he could have jumped from a skinny tree branch onto a deck that's 2 feet wide and crawled in through a window. A window, I mind you, that had knickknacks and other things, including shoes and plants and blinds. Somehow crawled in amongst all of that and must have returned it back to the way he fucking found it, because this particular criminal, murderous piece of shit, right, had a sense of fucking dignity when it came to neatness. That's the only thing we know about the criminal. He was neat as fuck, right? Fucking Brian Kohlberger don't even got a shower curtain. Sounds like a fucking slob to me. Literally. What do you mean he don't got a fucking shower curtain? Fucking slob, right? Fucking that guy Drip Drop is just a fucking moron's moron. He's the king of the morons, and I'm glad the morons had flocked to him to help keep him fed. You keep your morons to yourself is my fucking analogy. I don't want anything to do with your morons. Keep them. And well, let them sue me for fucking slander. They can sue me all the fuck they want. My opinion of what I've observed and what's been shared publicly is my fucking opinion. If you don't fucking like it, then hey, too bad. Do what you got to do. If you can afford to sue me, then let's go to court. Fucking sue me. Unfucking believable. If your name is mentioned in any of the documents and or any of the videos and all the other shit that's been collected and put out on the internet, if you're a part of any of that and I brought you up, too fucking bad. You don't like it? Go cry. Go cry to your mommy. I can't do that because my mommy's dead. You know? Jeff Bates. Fucking, if that guy's last name is really Bates, it's because he's Master Bates, okay? That's his real name. And look at that tinsel. Listen, I take ownership of my morons, okay? I take ownership of that. I've been sued twice in my life when I was a partner in a different business a long time ago. And let me tell you the truth. And I should, I don't know, I would have to disclose who I am, which I've done many times anyway. But in the case that I argued in a small claims court, I won. And in the case that we hired a lawyer, right, he wouldn't do what I was demanding he do, which was, if you're going to support, I'm in construction. If you're going to sue me and say that I didn't do this, this, or this, right? And then you come to court with a document from a separate company saying, I didn't do this, this, or this, and the person that wrote that document isn't with you to present his document, then that's hearsay, and you need to take it and throw it in the fucking garbage, okay? We need facts that I didn't do this, this, or that. And that wasn't it. On this house, this guy claimed we damaged one of his window screens or something. And it wasn't even, I wouldn't give the guy any money for the window screen. And this is why. They were the old steel screens from back in the 40s. And they were all rotted out and broken all over the house. But apparently, this one rotted out and didn't break. We broke it. It's like, go fuck yourself with that noise. You need screens in every one of these. You need new fucking windows, as a matter of fact. And you're going to take me to court? Didn't call, try to resolve nothing. You're just going to fucking sue me? Have at it, bro. And then another one that I actually, that one I lost because we had the lawyer. And they brought in something, fucking estimate from somewhere, and the court took it. But my argument was sound, but my lawyer wouldn't put the argument out there that way. How can you have 17 windows on a house that are all equally rusted and crivelled up and fucked up and ripped? And this is the only window that he did damage to that was never like that. When it looks, if you took pictures of all them fucking screens and laid them on a table like they did with Cousin Vinny, right? Nobody in their right mind would be able to tell one screen from the next, except by the size of the window. That would be the only way for you to identify where what screen came from. Otherwise, they were all the same decrepit fucking screen from before I got there. Anyway, it was insane. I think this person they were trying to get enough money, and they got very little from us. In another case, we did a repair on a home, and 3 months later, a huge windstorm comes through. Huge, 85 to 95 mile an hour gusts. Sustained winds of over 70 miles an hour. It fucking blew down 100-year-old oak trees. It blew down fucking telephone pole all over this fucking area where that work was, all over the place. In that particular area where this person is trying to sue, every single house on the street was damaged from the wind. Every fucking house, not just hers. Her argument was because I was the last person to work on the house that I'm supposed to warranty the entire fucking project on the house. So, for example, I replaced a piece of siding, right? The wind came by and blew the whole wall off. Well, I'm responsible for that whole wall. Are you a fucking moron? Why didn't you just call your insurance company? You're going to sue me to get me to pay for that fucking wall of siding, you stupid bitch? When every house in the fucking neighborhood's missing siding, your trees are down, your telephone poles, your power's out. And when I went to court and I stood up in front of the judge, I said, I'm not denying that my siding blew off that woman's home. I go, but her own pictures proved to you that it wasn't just my piece of siding, that it was the whole wall on a 20-year-old home. The whole wall. You got 900 square feet of blow off, and I put on 6 square feet of fucking siding repair. What? I got a response for the whole wall. The judge chuckled. And he asked her to continue arguing, and she did. And he finally said, okay, I've heard enough. I'll make a decision. And they mail you the fucking decision, and we won. I won. That was for my own business, I think, at that time. No, that was still in the partnership because I've never been sued. I don't even got a complaint in my company. Not a single complaint. I don't take any of your money until the work is done. Don't want none of your fucking money. I'm going to do what I promised. Pay me when I'm done. That's how the world should roll. Nonetheless, some of these arguments are made under the guise of you have to have a guilt or innocent view of this. I'm not saying Koberger is innocent, folks. That is not the perspective I'm using to make to make myself see what I'm seeing. I'm listening to what they're giving us. I'm reading what they're giving us. And I don't know if even all of that could be proven, right? We still have to see how a jury deals with it. What did Tinsel say? Heidi, people want everything for free, it seems. Yeah. Yeah, all my Google reviews are good. Maybe not from streaming. I'm sure if there's any reviews for streamers, especially when I was doing politics for them 2 years. More than that, I did them from 15 until 25 years. Oh, yeah. I had probably as many or more people blocked than I had members of, and I had 2,400 members. I had at least that many or even a more significant number than 2,400 that I blocked from my stream. Nobody has proven a damn thing, Grant. That's the catch-22. There's no evidence to support. The evidence that they're telling us tells this particular story only tells that story if you don't question it. But the minute you try to make sense of what they're saying or show, like if you go outside and you scratch your name into concrete, your name is in concrete. That's verifiable. That is your name in concrete, right? So if your name is Joe and you scratch your name in concrete or you did it before the concrete dried, then there's solid evidence that your name is Joe in concrete. If the evidence of him turning off his car was picked up on a cam where he was getting gas, And you could see that he's holding the buttons and the screen turns off, and then he checks it and puts it in his pocket. I'd accept that as he turned off his phone. There's none there. That's the problem here. The idea that that's his car. Where you've got 10 fucking 1,000, 20 fucking billion cameras around that area, and you got 100 videos. Well, why, when the policeman is asked, do any of those videos show Kohlberger or Kohlberger's car? And he says, no. Yeah, if just one warrant gets suppressed, there will be a ripple effect. Why is it? Yeah, it's these things that concern. It doesn't concern me whether Brian Kohlberger is guilty or innocent or the outcome of a jury. What really concerns me is how, just the same concerns the defense attorney had, and that I had from day one before they even mentioned Dan Taylor, was how do you come to these conclusions on these statements? I mean, it's a conspiracy theory. It's fucking conspiracy theory. Like, how many conspiracy theories surround 9/11? How many surround Kennedy's death? How many surround fucking the World War II, the Hawaiian attack, the Pearl Harbor? I mean, there's conspiracies for everything out there. The moon landing, the fucking Earth is round. The Earth isn't round. Right? And you don't have any supportable data to argue that he actually did turn his phone off to mask the crime. The fact that the crime was committed is secondary. You're saying his intent was to hide his location to go commit a crime. You can't prove that. You can't prove his car was around the house. You can't prove that the car that you're picking up in videos for the next fucking 10 hours, right? You can't even say that those unquestionably belong to Brian Kohlberger. They're consistent and similar. That isn't proof. The fuck, we're all consistent and similar, right? Take two fat guys and turn them around. Who the fuck's who? You don't know. They're similar. Which fat guy did it? Unreal. I thought going ahead with this was a good idea. Listen, the minute they got through the car, the house, the apartment, and the parents' home, and they found nothing to connect Brian Kohlberger to the victims or the victims to Brian, both electronically and otherwise, and or through physical evidence removed from the crime scene, surreptitiously, unknowingly or intentionally, right? Where's the fucking trophy? They tried to convince you that Brian Kohlberger had an ID of one of the victims in a black glove in his closet in Pennsylvania. That's not true. It is not true. He had an ID of somebody in his glove in his closet. Okay. What does that make him a mass murderer? That's what you're going to extrapolate that from one to the other? There's no evidence that Brian Kohlberger spied on a woman he helped secure an apartment for. There's no evidence of that at all. But you'll accept that because you want him to be guilty or you believe he's guilty. And you don't want to take time to use your fucking brain. You want to be part of a group and you're all reinforced and pat each other on the back because you're part of this group of people that all think that. And you join all these streams that think that. That's what I mean. Keep your fucking idiocy over on them streams. You don't need to come in here. That's why I blocked that guy, Jeff. I don't want people like that in here. If you don't have an answer to these questions, especially if the fucking government can't answer these questions as they've been able to do, and you're still going to push for an idea of who did it or who didn't do it, you shouldn't even be in true crime. You literally shouldn't be in true crime because that's not what we do here. The most we can do is pay attention to the documentation, to the sworn testimony, the affidavits, the blah, 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 and extrapolate from there. That's all you can do. You don't know that Gilgo killer actually killed all them women in New York. You don't know that his wife was or wasn't involved. You don't know that. You can't know that. The police are telling you that. The government's telling you that, right? I mean, it's okay. It's one side to a story that has two. I can handle the truth or sarcasm. So you're saying he's hiding victims' IDs in there and looked at them while following the blondes on Insta. You got no evidence to support that. Where do you support that statement, Tinsel? You extrapolated that from what? That his home in Pennsylvania, he had a glove of these victims' IDs in this glove and he was following them on Insta. That's not accurate at all. That's what they're saying online. That's what the guilters are telling you. There's no evidence to support that. None. What do you mean? How do I mean? You can't make that statement you made has no bearing in fact. There's no evidence that's been shown. There's no motion that's been used to strike any of that. I don't understand the argument you're making. You're coming to a conclusion that was conspiracy theorized on the fucking internet. Why don't you just go listen to that woman, Dot? Right? Dot was on a rear deck that faced the house that saw Dylan outside with the black guy and that other girl and someone else smoking weed. Right? And then that went from that, and actually they put this on Paramount Plus. Then she went from that to being down there smoking weed with him, and I blew up on her. The fuck are you talking about? You just told us you were on a fucking patio on a different property overlooking theirs, and now all of a sudden you're down there smoking weed with him? Stupid cunt. She was a fucking like that WSU Kim. What she's saying could be accurate, but what does that mean? Nothing. There's nothing that she's ever put forward that makes Brian Kohlberger the doer of the crime or the not the doer of the crime. You know? Yeah, it probably is. It probably is. If that's who that guy is, you got to get the fuck out of here, bro. I don't want you in here under one of your 37 fucking names. Okay? That's the other reason I stream by day to day. That dawned on me the other day. Yeah. I don't want that little fucker in here. Well, you act like him. You make the arguments like him. You're putting things out there that have no way to be verified. It's your statement that he had those IDs, and that was the fucking conspiracy theory for months, for years, right? When you say you won't discuss your thoughts on innocence or guilt, why does it seem you actually do discuss your strong feelings? I don't discuss innocence. All I'm pointing out is that the accusations made to arrest this gentleman are most likely and logically the one way that he could not have done it. Okay? It doesn't mean he didn't do it. But their unsubstantiated story that can't be verified or confirmed says to me that that's the one fucking, if there was ever a way you could charge somebody with a crime that didn't amount to evidence that they committed a crime, I think we're living in that reality right now, and so many laws in so many courts against so many different people, including this one. Right? You're going to charge an ex-president with 94 fucking crimes. You're going to for his executive duties. Trump had the right to say Georgia fucked up, that Georgia needs a recount. He had the right, as the president of the United States, the top fucking law enforcement officer of the land. He had every right in the world to question that election. He had every right in the world to ask people to look in it. He had every right in the world to ask people to support auditing it. Every fucking right in the world to do that. As the president of the United States, not protecting himself, but protecting the rule of law in the country, because cheating and voting is a crime. Okay? It was okay when Al Gore stopped the fucking count against Bush. Nobody had a fucking problem with that. Why wouldn't Al Gore what he was doing? Why about all the lawyers that joined and agreed with Al Gore? How come they weren't all fucking charged with a crime, interfering with an election? How come? It's fucking insane the way people don't seem to have a memory. And this happens all the time, this lawfare, because 98+% of these cases are given plea deals. And that's why these people have been allowed to get away with doing this for so long. It's become common practice. And along the way, you watch TV shows and you watch these cases, you yourselves are being programmed that you accept the common practice that a district attorney can indict a ham sandwich. I don't fucking accept that. I don't fucking accept that at all. What could a ham sandwich possibly have done that it could be indicted? That's how ridiculous that statement is. And it's meant to be ridiculous, and it should not be allowed. He didn't have 15 million more votes. He only had 3 million more votes, or less than that. Trump is getting close to 80. If you add how many Kamala got, which was more than Trump, and then add those two numbers together, Mr. Maya, and then add up the Biden-Trump election numbers, you'll see the difference is nowhere near 15 million. And what you're not accounting for, if you want to be fair and reasonable, what you're not really accounting for is that was a one-off election where mail-in voting across the country was allowed. Just be aware of that. And I don't want to get into anything other than that particular point. That was a one-off election. Therefore, because people didn't have to get up off their ass to vote, it doesn't surprise me that more people came out to vote. I don't have an issue with that. I have a big issue with how these votes were counted, how in 5 swing states, and the biggest Democratic districts in those 5 states, that the minute Florida closed and told you who won, those 5 states all had problems with their machines. They had problems of flooding, and they reported to the media that they weren't going to count till the following day. It was all halted. And in fact, they did not halt the count. Matter of fact, they kept counting, sent everybody home, but only Democrats remained in these buildings. Sent everybody home. The Republicans, the observers, the Democratic observers, and sent it out and left just a few people behind to continue counting. I have a fucking problem with that. I'm not saying that they stole the election or that they cheated, but what I am saying is when you observe what really took place, there's issues and there's legal issues that need to be addressed in there. And they never were. They flipped it around immediately and they did all that lawfare against Trump. Someone, just so you know, folks, who I did not support in 2020. I did not support the guy. But I don't give a fuck. Cheating is cheating. And if there's even the semblance of cheating taking place, then that needs to be discussed. I'll be right back. Maybe you guys can hear that alarm. Hang on. Our entire justice system needs to be reformed, retrained. You know, like I keep bringing that case up in Florida where they got a warrant for the guy's truck, not the guy that actually committed the crime. Because they had no probable cause to arrest him as the committer of that crime. And there was a dead woman there, okay? His ex-wife, his truck was there. Nobody could connect him to the truck at that particular time of day. And so they went to the court and they asked for a subpoena for the truck. Got the truck, found fucking evidence of her blood in that truck and other DNA evidence, and then went and arrested the guy for murder. Okay, I think they may even have found, anyway. Then later on, when they finally do get access to the woman's internal security cameras, they catch the whole incident on camera. It was all recorded. He beat this woman to death in her garage. Fucking sick. But again, there's an example of the law being followed as the law is written. And it's an example of me pointing out to you over and over again. The government has a noose around its neck to protect you. A judge's sole purpose is to make sure that the government does not cross their limit, which is written in the Constitution. You don't have a right to free speech. You have free speech. The government has no fucking right to infringe upon it at all, ever. And now we know they were by using corporations, which I rail against corporations all the time because it's that multinational corporation. It's those people that are allowing slavery around the globe. Hell and horror to come up everywhere they want to make fucking a dime. Ukraine is at war because of these big corporations and the politicians that support them. From both parties, both Republican and Democrat. There's no innocence here. And that's an issue. And that's why that's why it's so important to question. Not whether Kohlberger did it or not. Okay? And not even, it doesn't matter. What matters really to the citizens should be, are these people carrying out their duties in accordance with the constitutional limits placed upon them? Are they doing their due diligence? Are they supplying evidence that makes it more likely than not that this person committed the crime? When you take that DNA evidence out, folks, and stop the public from hearing that, keep that secret. This is another thing that's disturbed me. You're going to protect the FBI for presenting that fucking tip to the cops, but you're not going to protect the fucking information itself? Are you people out of your motherfucking mind? Are you out of your motherfucking mind? If what the FBI did is to be sealed, then their results should be sealed. And nobody should have heard about DNA on a knife sheath. That should never have come out into the fucking public. Ever. It's quite fucking irritating, some of the things they've done. And we don't seem to really question it. We're like, oh, they had it. They might as well speak about it. Okay. All right. Then why aren't they showing you how conclusively they can place Brian in that house without the DNA? because both have to combine to tell that story. You can't make up some fucking tale of Wonderland, okay? And then bingo, here's my fucking trump card. I got some DNA. Man, if that's the way you think the judicial system should work and you're okay with that and you just want to decide whether this kid did it or not, based on the flimsiest fucking statements I've ever read in my life, criminals are known to turn off their phone to mask their location prior to or during a crime. My experience in 15 years tells me that. I've been itching my balls for a long time, too. But what the fuck's that got to do with the price of fucking eggs? Fingerprints on door handles. Well, you would have to have the fingerprint on door handle. You know, but again, what you're doing is you're adding something into the narrative that doesn't exist. And I can add things into the narrative to show the kid didn't do it, right? We could do that. We could show things, add anything we wanted to the narrative to show that he did do it. But you're not supposed to add anything to the narrative. Nothing. And that, I'm not trying to pick on you, Don. I'm just showing you that that's where we get off the fucking rails. That's why the government takes advantage of us, because we're so willing to go down these fucking rabbit holes. These people plus put us in rabbit. The news puts you in rabbit holes all day. YouTube puts you in fucking rabbit holes all day. And the bottom line is, who's paying attention to the fucking important facts? Isn't that supposed to be our job? Well, yeah, but you can't say we just don't know on seal and then add whatever you want that you don't know. In other words, you're going to define what you don't know because you don't know. And it makes sense. But that's just ridiculous. Just think about that. Look, you're going to inject something you can't confirm and don't know to be true because you don't know what they all have. Where's the sense in that? I struggle with trying to understand that. If you notice, I never add anything in. I'm not adding in stories or adding in because stuff is sealed. I don't know what they got that's sealed. That stuff might turn the whole case over, but then you still have to ask the question. If that stuff that's sealed is that damning against Mr. Kohlberger, why wasn't it used to get the warrants? Why wasn't it used to get the arrest? I mean, come on. What you would have known long fucking before you knew DNA was you had fingerprints. If there was no other car talked about in this, if there was no other vehicle, let's say it was always a 14 to 16 and that's it at all, 100%, that was the only car. Okay? So let's say that's the data that they gave us. Then you find fingerprints, right? Then you run those vehicles and you do some of the things they did to come up with many names, one of them being Brian Kohlberger. Wouldn't it be up to you as an investigator to approach each one of these Elantra owners and ask them for a DNA and a fingerprint sample to exclude them? And those that refuse become suspects that you keep an eye on? In other words, when you look at the way they ran this investigation, they didn't really do anything but apparently surveil the guy. According to the PCA, the car was driving away before the we do have a trial for both sides to debate, but you can't debate facts that aren't in existence. You can't add an explanation to something that isn't been explained one way or the other, right? I mean, people have said this in the past, and I think rightly so. It's an analytical observation of what you're being shown and told. Are we sure beyond any reasonable doubt that a K-bar knife inflicted the wounds and damage to all four victims? That no other knife or no other weapon could have possibly was used or could possibly have been anything except a K-bar knife? I mean, just because there's a knife sheath in the room, even on the bed, folks, doesn't mean that the murder weapon was a K-bar. They're telling you that's what it means, but that's not what that presence of that sheath tells you. It just doesn't. In order to establish that the knife sheath is telling you that, look at me, the murder weapon came from me, you have to have forensic investigation to come to that confirmation, right? We don't know the truth at all about any of these arguments. Brian Kohlberger could have, in fact, turned his phone off to hide from the police. Brian Kohlberger could have, in fact, been in that 11 to 13 and in fact, whatever fucking car drove around. He absolutely could have. But coulda, woulda, shoulda isn't a basis under which you throw a person in jail and take their life. And when somebody says that there's a glove found with an ID or IDs in it, and automatically the rumor comes out that he had the IDs of these victims, doesn't make any sense. Then we all run with that. Yeah, it was an off-campus property. That's why I kind of early on when people ask me what do I think could have happened, I think that being an off-campus property is a very important thing to have if you're going to distribute drugs in an area like that. Every one of your college campuses are connected to a fucking drug cartel. I don't mean the workers or the president or the staff. The drug cartel's connection to your campus is that's the age group of people that are their customers. Every college in the United States. And you're not going to hear that in the news. Just some jerk off named Sergeant Friday's going to tell you the fact. Any place where they can sell a quantity of their fucking drugs is where they're going to be. And you don't want to be on the actual property where they have their own police forces and their own fucking security. You would want an off-campus but conveniently located house to the campus to transact your business. That's what we do as criminals. I'm not going to sell drugs 11 miles away from the motherfucking campus. I'm going to sell drugs off the campus in relationship to the campus. I mean, you don't even got to be a criminal to realize the sense of that. You going to sell fucking gasoline in the middle of the desert where there's no cars? For fuck's sakes. You're going to put a gas station somewhere that when it snows, people can't climb the hill to get to you? No. I mean, the case is so rampant in speculation and narrative and misinformation, blah, blah, blah. Grant, exactly. And none of the facts get discussed. These facts that have been given to us, these facts that have been litigated, at least as far as motions, at least as far as demands to fucking produce, discover me the information you got. But it's Ann Taylor holding it up. No, man. How about if you're putting a puzzle together and you're missing fucking half the puzzle and you call the puzzle company and they send you 2 or 3 pieces? You're like, dude, that ain't helping. I need the other pieces. And they argue. We shouldn't have to give them to you. What the fuck? I'm putting together your puzzle, right? Our educational system is a fucking propaganda system. It's not. It's a programming system. They don't teach people how to think. I could see Brian Koberger being convicted for this crime. I just can't see Brian Koberger being convicted for this crime on the information that so far has been debunked. But I could still see Brian Koberger being convicted of this crime. I've said it a number of times. The house around the cars in 11 to 13 still don't prove Brian didn't do it. That is not evidence he didn't do it. It isn't. It's evidence to say that it wasn't his car. It's evidence the defense will say shows that his presence wasn't there because they're telling you he was in his car over here later on. They're showing you Mr. Koberger admits to these different locations of travel. You see? How many people remember me when I first came in on Dago's show in February 2022 when I said that PCA is more exculpatory evidence than it is inculpatory evidence, that PCA gives this guy an out of which he couldn't create all by himself. And when they demanded by law in that state that you have to produce your alibi, I said Brian Koberger's alibi defense is caught up within the documents used to arrest him, that those documents are his alibi. The information the police are supplying is his alibi. Because his statement that eventually came out that I was driving around, which I predicted, I said all this kid needs to do is just say I was driving around. Where were you going? Well, in those areas south of Moscow that the police said I was. I was actually there. Where were you before that? Well, I was over there. Well, how do we know you're there? Well, I'm just telling you. I'm telling you, this is the route I took. That's all Brian Koberger has to say. And that's what did Ann keep saying? We can't really complete our alibi until we have the information from the officers. We can't complete our alibi until we have discovery, until we have the information from the officers. I mean, it was so obvious. That's exactly what I would say if I was charged with that crime or any crime. And you put up some flimsy bullshit like this. I'd be like, yeah, I was driving around. Provably, I've done this 13 fucking times since I moved there. So it wasn't unusual. Yeah, I admit I drove around all the time at night. Why? I'm just fucked up. I'm a night owl. Why? I am. And there's millions of other people like me. I got to define what a night owl is to you. I would be very argumentative. Yeah, I did. I drove around all them fucking times. You proved I did. And you can't prove that they have anything to do with the crime. That's your fucking problem as the government. That's why Brian can use that as his alibi, because you're the fucking witness to his alibi, the government. I thought a bunch of stupid motherfuckers wrote that PCA, in all fairness. In all fairness, what I would have done when I found the transfer DNA is I would have went to the local prosecutor and asked them to fucking impanel a grand jury. And I would have went through a grand jury process, a secret grand jury process with no arrest until the grand jury gave me the green light to make an arrest. But the grand jury along the way, just so you know, grand jury along the way could have requested warrants be issued against different items with the suspect that you're alleging is involved because you have a DNA sample. So let's get a warrant to fucking trap and trace his car. Let's get a warrant to fucking swab him, or let's secretly go swab places where he lives and works and hangs out. There was so much they could have done once they got that transfer DNA. But the one thing I don't think they should have done is create some fucked up story and charge him with four homicides. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why. I don't even think it's that bad. Honestly, you know what I think the problem really is, folks, rather than the conspiracies like that where the university was involved? The university's making more money now than before. As a matter of fact, the following year, the enrollment went up in Idaho. Not to mention they bought that Phoenix Online, and they got all the revenues coming in from that fucking online school now, that do it from home school, because they understood the value of those schools, the internet schools. So no, I don't see any of that doing any damage financially to that town or to mainly their biggest employer. I don't think they suffered a one iota of loss financially, other than what it's costing to run this investigation and all these policemen running around telling all these fucking stories. That's part, they took a hit for that, I'm sure, but the taxpayer kicked in $1 million that we know of already. God knows how many more the citizens of Idaho are going to have to kick into this. Because they caught the killer, in their opinion. Yeah, his stupid book about how big of a hero he is. I know everybody makes things. Anytime somebody makes something about them in any of these streams, that WSU Kim was famous for that. Everybody that I say is a scammer, 99.9% of the obvious fucking behavior of a scammer is they start to make it about themselves. Their feelings, their emotions, their this, their that. And, you know, I try not to make it about myself because it isn't about me. But I do give you an explanation as to why I see what I see, what my life has experienced when I went to court, how those policies and procedures followed through. Fuck, I went to criminal court. Well, I'll say more than once, but once and twice and I've shared it online, and I've won twice. And every time I've had a lawyer, I've always had to take a plea deal. I got crimes on my record that shouldn't be had I just taken the case myself, but I didn't do that. One case that I won, here's the funny thing. One case that I won, I unquestionably won this case. Man, and I just feel like spitting it out there for your buddy Detective John there. But it was a serious crime, not against women or children or violence, but it was a serious crime. Okay, a serious theft. And I beat that case in court. Okay, not because I litigated it, but because one of the witnesses refused to show up and cooperate. And because of that, the whole case had to be dismissed. They had no other fucking evidence to corroborate. Man, I should tell you what this crime is. And you know what? I don't give a fuck. This is another good example of how things work. I'm going to just skid across this quickly, and I'm not going to get into the minutia. If you were personal friends of mine and you wanted to hang out, we met, we're friends. Nobody that knows me is not aware of this. Okay. But a long time ago, I robbed a bank. Okay. When they grabbed me, I had a bunch of money on me. All right. And they arrested me for felony bank robbery. And they brought me to jail. I sat in jail for a little bit, and they finally bring me in to be arraigned. And I want to plead guilty. There's more to the story than just the superficial I'm giving you. But my intent was to plead guilty. My lawyer entered a plea of not guilty. when we went to the preliminary hearing, because we did go to a preliminary hearing, the prosecution came forward and withdrew the case. And the reason the prosecution withdrew the case was because they had Polaroid images of me and they had black and white video of me handing a piece of paper to a teller, and the teller calmly and reasonably looking at it, nodding to me, opening up her drawer, taking out a bunch of money, and handing it to me through the window. And unfortunately for her, also the note that I had given her was all returned to me. That's the imagery they had of me. That imagery is circumstantial evidence. They needed the woman that I approached to testify to this information, and she refused. Therefore, the prosecutor said, we're not going to pursue this. We want to dismiss the case. And what happened was I flipped out. I did that for a specific reason, and I'm not going to get into the details. And I flipped out and I told the court, are you people out of your fucking mind? Am I the guy you want behind you and your kids at the grocery store the next time you're there, or anywhere else out in the fucking public or out on the street? You're going to take me and let me go because of some fucking witness? Fuck her. I did it. Okay. And that caused all kinds of fucking problems. My lawyer couldn't snatch me, grab me fast enough to get me out of that courtroom and tell me just what an idiot I was, that I just beat a felony bank robbery charge and that I needed to shut the fuck up. And I repeated, I said, did you hear what I said? What I just said in that fucking court, you stupid motherfucker? And you want to get me out of jail? You're dumber than the fucking rest of the people I know. Anyway, the reason I wanted to share that was evidence is important. Evidence is a difference between incarceration and freedom. Evidence is a difference between being arrested and freedom. Evidence is fucking everything in the judicial system. And that's all that you can pay attention to when observing a case that you're not a part of. And let me promise you this. You pay attention to it even motherfucking more when you're the center of the case. You follow me? So if you're charged with a crime, folks, trust me when I tell you, and don't anybody go out there and get charged with a crime. But God forsake that you do. You're going to pay more attention to the evidence they have against you than you'll ever fucking imagine. Okay? It's important for people to understand that the state's allegations are everything. They're not for you to make conclusions on. The state is to provide a stream of events that conclude for themselves based on the factual representation and the factual verification of the data given you. That is the standard, not this fucking bullshit that we're all trying to accept. Well, you know, he's got bushy eyebrows. I don't give a fuck if he's got a bushy asshole. It's got nothing to do with the facts. She did not identify him. She didn't know the person in the house. She didn't get a clear view of the person in the house. Why didn't Officer Payne say he was white, black, or Hispanic? Why wasn't that included? Why wasn't that fucking question asked and answered and put in the PCA? I don't understand. I'm going to ask a question to a potential witness that saw something. I'm going to fucking dig as deep as I can go in that. But if I got to, holy fuck, almost want to tranquilize your ass, bitch. What do you mean you saw a guy with a fucking mask and bushy eye? What color was his hair? I don't know. What color was his skin? I don't know. Well, how the fuck do you come to, what are you talking about? When you told me he was 6 feet tall. Okay, were you telling me because he was standing in front of you? Well, he was walking towards me. Or did you account for the 6 inches in difference in floor? I mean, based on what you're telling me, this guy's about 5'4". See, those observations should be made. Those questions need to be asked by the people doing the investigation, not some fucking moron called Sergeant Friday. And a lot of you out there understand this. A lot of you do. I got to say that. There's a lot of people that understand that. So and I know you go in these other rooms. I know you're doing your walk. Go listen to Crime Circus. Go listen to TikTok. They're amusing if you want to use them for amusement. But I almost find it stomach wrenching that a quadruple homicide like this, anybody could come out into the public and turn it into fucking amusement or for entertainment purposes only. Is that jerk off paparazzi? You can't entertain me around what happened with 4 people's death. You just can't. Not when we know it was a homicide. Not when we know they were fucking stabbed to death. Now, if you want to amuse me with 4 people's death, okay, make it be a guy that took his fucking parachute off and jumped anyway. I mean, you could find humor in some people's deaths, right? Not that any death is funny, but some of the events that lead up to the eventual demise of us as humans sometimes is fucking humorous, right? You know, setting a woman on fire in the subway, no humor in that. Slaughtering 4 young adults in a house. To me, there's no humor to be found there. None. So I even question people's sanity to allow these creators to fucking entertain you with that. I'm just stunned. You know? I mean, if you look at it, like Clue and Cletus, their entertainment comes from going after the creators and bashing on creators and then bashing them back. But they're not really, at least they don't. They're not attacking and bashing and accusing and alleging. Right? You can make the circumstances in that case fit any way you wanted to fit. But the bottom line is there just isn't any information. And what did the police do? Rightly so. They've arrested and charged nobody. Not enough anyone could be a Koberger. I really get a kick out of those that they just want to. Some people like to be contrary just for the sake of getting your goat. Some people just want to be contrary, and they'll do it in a very, very well mannered voice and attitude, and they'll pretend they're fucking religious and what the fuck ever, strum their fucking guitars, never say a swear word like me. That's entertaining. I think I'm more entertaining by pointing out the ridiculousness of us, me included. I mean, look at the ridiculous thing I did by doing that fucking crime. That was a stupid thing to do. However, I did glean results from that action that would boggle your fucking minds. More good came from that than you could ever fucking even dream of. I'm referring to when I robbed that bank. The results of that, astronomical what's happened since then. I'll tell you what here's the most insane thing ever. You'll ever hear this. I'm a convicted bank robber of a specific bank, which later lent me over $125,000 for a pleasure fucking yacht. Also, I'll make that simple. The fucking bank I robbed, not long later, a few years later, lent me $125,000+ fucking dollars for a pleasure yacht. Okay? Imagine that fucking shit. And in jest, I say today that had I known they'd have loaned me money, I wouldn't have robbed their ass. Which is obviously in jest, and it's fucking kind of corny and kind of goofy, but yeah, it's kind of fits the whole fucking story. Imagine that. Go find a bank robber that was given that kind of money for a pleasure boat, not a fucking home, not something that you need, a fucking pleasure yacht. Holy Christ. And I love irony, Grant. I love irony. I love when a cop is on the stand and Ann Taylor asks him a question and he has to confirm what she's been arguing. That no matter how many hours of video you got, none of it can be identified to being Brian Koberger on the night of that crime. None of it. You could have 48 minutes of you could have a GoPro on the roof of a fucking white Elantra. Okay. You can't say that's Brian or that's Brian's car. I don't give a fuck how many video captures you got of a white Elantra. None of them clearly identify the occupant nor the owner of the fucking Elantra you got on video. Right? I mean, it's insane. You might as well have blank video. Now you're going to build a story up around these videos. Well, first you better confirm whose car that is and who the fuck is driving that car. And then and only then, track the movements of that vehicle and connect the dots. You don't fucking connect the dots and then tell me it's his car with no evidence to tell me it's his fucking car, you stupid motherfuckers. Not the people here, but the police. How the fuck do you do that? I remember there's another thing I did. I was going 135 miles an hour down an expressway intentionally because it was the straightest part of my expressway where I live. And there was a car that had a police car actively standing next to a car with his lights on because he pulled them over. And I was in the furthest outside lane and I blew by that motherfucker at 135 plus miles an hour, right? Maybe an hour later, maybe not even that long. Yeah, I saw that car, Grant. I just let her go. Hell yeah, bro. 429 Cobra Jet and a fucking Thunderbird. It was a 70. It was a car I had built. But anyway, hell yeah, I went by that motherfucker. And he did come out after me with that fucking person in the back of their car. He dragged the ticketer with him. I could see in the mirror until they vanished. But he came out and started calling in on the radio. Well, anyway, I got off that expressway and fucking blitzed my way through town. And eventually, folks, I was a little buzzed and shit too. I have to admit it was wrong of me to do. Totally wrong what I did. I don't recommend anybody ever do this. But driving the vehicle as hard as I'd been driving it, right? On short little spurts, turn down this street, turn down this. I got lost. I didn't know where I was, but my car overheated. And I had to pull over and it shut off. It overheated and shut off, and I had to pull over and stop. And I did just that. And I sat there smoking cigarettes. Okay. Maybe 10 or 15 minutes goes by, and I'm going to try to start the car again. And a police car pulls up next to me and turns on his lights. Gets out, and he arrests me and impounds my car. And what did he do that for? Because he claimed I was going 135 miles an hour in a 55 mile an hour zone. Okay. When I went to trial, do you think old Sarge got a ticket? I'll let you guys vote. Do you think, based on the information I just shared with you, that I was given a ticket? That I had to pay? Do you think I was convicted of speeding? Do you think I was charged and convicted without running from the police? Oh, they charged me with all of that. Do you think I was convicted of it? Why not? Well, I wasn't. No, Mandy, I definitely was not convicted for this. Not even close. As a matter of fact, I was so fucking arrogant and cocky. No, definitely not. Here's why. The information that they used to charge me was that I owned a two-door black sedan. No, they didn't fuck up. They expected me to plead. I own a two-door sedan, black in color, that was observed and caught on radar going 135 miles an hour in a 55 mile an hour zone. I probably went even beyond that, be honest with you. I think at best that car probably would have gone 150. But anyway, that's what they alleged. They pulled over a black two-door sedan many, many, many miles from the original crime. Many, many miles. They didn't have a license plate. They didn't have the year, make, model, and they didn't have an identification of the driver, which, just think about that. I don't know if you've ever been in a car going 135 miles an hour. Your observational ability of that is almost no time at all. The fact that he recognizes a two-door sedan is like he has good eyesight, that motherfucker. But because the case couldn't be substantiated and connected to a vehicle you found 40 minutes later, parked and overheated, you can't convict the guy of this crime. The district attorney was losing their fucking mind. Good looking fucking girl. Real good looking girl. She's assistant DA. She's over there stamping her fucking feet. And I said, hey, traffic tickets aren't designed to buy you a new dress or fix those shoes you're smashing on the floor. Traffic tickets are given to people, and people pay fines when you can convict them of the fucking charge you levied. My lawyer just looked at me and said, son, you need to be a lawyer. You're just a fucking smartass. Yeah, they had to dismiss the case. They had to dismiss the case. And here's what ended up happening. Listen. The judge said they did a private meeting. They went up to the fucking desk, and my lawyer comes back. He goes, just do me a favor. I go, what? He goes, just say I'm guilty when he asks you this next question. I go, what the fuck? I'm not. He said it's going to be a non-moving violation, like failure to yield to a traffic device, like making a right hand on red without stopping, or something. I forget how he explained it, but he said it won't affect your insurance. There won't be any points on your license. He said, but Can you please just at least admit to that to just go away? He goes, because the court, although the court sides with you, the district attorney is just so rattled because you're such an asshole that you got to give her something. She's got to work with this guy every fucking day. You don't. He said, so can you do me that favor and just accept? You'll pay a $50 fine and you'll go home. And I was like, oh, okay. Even an asshole like me can be reasonable. Okay. And so I got a non-moving violation offense, and it cost me $50 and a $25 court fee. And so again, evidence. And if it's circumstantial, that circumstantial evidence has to leave no ambiguity. 3 people saw you. Okay, you went 150 miles an hour, and this guy caught your the red pinstripe on a 2-door sedan with the carburetor sticking out of the hood. If he'd had that much detail, I'd have been screwed. Right? He didn't. Black 2-door sedan was all he had. Not enough. That's what I mean by evidence. Evidence is everything. I always wonder what happened to the person that he was writing the ticket to, because I know he didn't give up. That guy didn't give up. You could see him in the mirror, because I'm telling you, this is a long ass fucking flat straightaway. It's an awesome piece of road. And you could see him in the mirror, dragging that person back to his car, putting them in the back, and fucking jumping in the car and coming after me. And then I got far enough away where I could see his lights. I really couldn't make out the car or anything, but I could make that out. Because even at 135 miles an hour, you could still see quite a bit back behind you. And what's in front of you, obviously. But it was awesome. Evidence means everything. And if we're not willing to examine the evidence being presented against Brian Kohlberger, and we just want to interpret the evidence the way we're told, without any real thorough examination, like Ann is putting them through, then I don't even know why we call this true crime. It really isn't. It's like a conspiratory crime. Conspiratorial crime, or what do you call that? They say we're guilty of doing. Conspiracy theory crime. I mean, that TikTok is there, that drip dropper, that crime fucking circus dude's the perfect guy for. He's got people parachuting in. He's got people jumping off a fucking pine tree limb. It's an inch around. Can you imagine a 180-pound man on a fucking limb? The limb would bend and drop him to the dirt. Yeah, my life would probably make a good movie. Listen, I'm the first to tell you, I made a lot of mistakes. I've made way more many good decisions, but prior to beginning making those good decisions, I made a lot of mistakes. I did a lot of stupid shit, made a lot of bad decisions, and there's no doubt about that. And I own them all. I chose to do the things I did. You could go ahead and say, oh, well, you're this and that, and nothing in my background that was ever done to me, even as I was a child, make it right or even reasonable for me to make the choices I made. I was just stupid and hell on wheels, man. I did not give a shit. And you know, you live that way and eventually it catches up to you. But that shit was funny, man. I'll never forget how mad that district attorney was. That lady was furious, bro. She wanted to have nothing of it except see me fucking find my license taken away. I mean, this woman wanted to hang me out there, and she, rightly so, regardless of the time of night. That's just an unreasonable thing for anybody to do, to drive that rate of speed on a public highway. I don't care if it's fucking no car out there or not. It's just insane. And yet there I was doing it. So, all right. Well, listen, I just wanted to have my little rant today. Bada bob, bada bob, bada big. And the other reason was, just so you know, I have a rack of baby back ribs and a slow cooker. And I needed something to burn up that time, because my house is filled with the smell of those fucking ribs. And oh my God, you want to just devour them. But they have to be in there for a predetermined amount of time. And we're coming close, another 20 minutes, they'll be ready. And so the other motive for me making this stream was so I could occupy myself and not go fucking pick apart my ribs. Coffee was driving to the opposite side of a mountain parkway. I didn't think I was speeding, but he told me I was. Reckless driving, which wasn't speeding, but reckless isn't good either. I was charged with reckless driving, excessive speed, blah, 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 blah. Running from the police, avoiding arrest. I was charged with all kinds of shit. It was insane. I never lost my license. Pull your teeth out after you eat the ribs. Why would I want to pull my teeth out? My teeth are mine. Yeah. I got a few teeth I do need to replace. They're not, there's two that are missing, but they're in the back. And then on one side, unfortunately, I've got 4 teeth with cavities, and I think it's just better off to replace them. We'll see what the dentist says on Monday. Cheesecake pudding, but no cake last night. Yeah, I like cake. I'm not a big cheesecake person. I don't really care for that many different types of cheese, in all fairness. I'm not a fan. I eat very plain food. I throw a steak on a grill. I don't want it marinated. I don't want you fucking with it and sticking garlic. Leave it the fuck alone. Put the steak on the grill and make me a steak. And then get out of the way. I'm going to eat it. That's how I roll with food. I'm not, it was a Van Savant comes in here and he tries to make these fucking recipes like he's in fucking France or some shit. Thinks he's a French chef. And he might very well be, but all that food preparation, fuck all of that, man. I want to taste the meat, right? I mean, come on. Yeah, my ribs are going to rock. I hope they better rock. I got a couple of days worth for sure. So I'm going to have to make some mashed taters. Got to have mashed taters or a baked tater when you're eating ribs. Going to have barbecue sauce, even though my good friend Frank Elefante, Elephant Man, tells me that stuff is loaded with bad stuff, and it probably is. No, Grant, that doesn't sound like you have a name with blonde hair and nice titties, so I'd prefer you didn't move in with me. Yum, yum, yum. And I love mashed potatoes. I take those instant mashed potatoes, and the trick to making those things good is milk and butter. Instant mashed potatoes should have the littlest, if no, content of water added to them. Never rehydrate them with fucking water. Always with milk, a little bit of salt, and butter. And then you whip them things up until they're nice and creamy. Oh, yeah. Then they actually taste like the real potato they once were. But if you add water, it kind of fucks them up, in my opinion. Makes them taste real bland. Matter of fact, that one girl, I don't think I ever brought her on the stream, Ashley. Yeah, she had me make up mashed potatoes for her family's Thanksgiving dinner. Yum, yum, yum. All right, well, there we go, folks. So we had, what do we got over here at YouTube? Probably not many people, which is fine. 36 watchers. How many likes do I got? I would hope you would all hit like. I mean, there's not that many of you. It's usually the same ones all. Oh, yeah, so we got as many fucking likes as we got viewers. So that's pretty epic. I appreciate that. On Twitter, I don't know what the hell we got. On Twitter. I'm sorry, on X. On the Elon's X. Idaho 4. The Elantra has zero connection to the murders. And I would like for someone in the audience, somebody come forward with data, okay, that shows that the statements in the PCA conclusively connect Brian Koberger in that car to that house. I'd like someone to come through with verifiable data. And that's what should be required in order for you to be put in jail. That should be what's required. Just like when I shared the crimes that I've committed here today. You need indisputable evidence or a likelihood so unbelievable that you would have to step outside of reality to accept this person didn't do it. The circumstantial evidence is powerful. But in this particular case with Brian Koberger, all of it's been debunked. So you in other words, the only evidence you have there is what you're calling transfer DNA. And that transfer DNA wouldn't be likely to give you a warrant to arrest this guy. And that's exactly why that PCA is written the way it's written. They knew they didn't have probable cause for this guy. That's exactly why I suspect when they went to the grand jury, they made the overt statement that car had been determined to be a 11 to 16, rather than saying that there were video images from 2 different locations that showed 2 different year, make, model cars. They wouldn't have got him an indictment. You all know they wouldn't have. If they would have said what I just said to a fucking jury, the jury would have said, you're out of your mind. What car did he own? Well, he owned a 14 to 16. Oh, okay, that one wasn't around the house. Then why'd you arrest the guy? That's exactly what they would have said. How can you tell me the car involved in the crime is 11 to 13 and then arrest the guy that owns a 14 to 16? Nobody can argue with that question. It's like a fucking idiot would ask that question. Right? And I suspect that when they went to the grand jury, just like they put in the documents to Judge, that they later determined the car to be an 11 to a... They later determined the car to possibly be an 11 to a 16. No, that's just bullshit fucking talk. Like I said before, if I want to be jerked off, I can, have someone do it for me that I know, pay someone to do it for me that I don't know, okay? Or do it myself. It's not that fucking hard to get done. I don't want to read your arrest warrant and you be trying to masturbate me from your fucking words. I don't need to see that. Don't need to hear that. Don't want to be it. So don't do it. It was fun. Great to be out. I didn't bring Cletus in. Let me just say this too. In case anybody sees Cletus, tell him listen to the end of the video. It's because he works during the day. And I really, literally wanted to burn up enough time. I wanted to burn up enough time for these ribs. Yeah, I know. That's fine. Let them make their arguments. They're ignoring. When you're asked if any of the videos that you have used, any of them, identify Brian Kohlberger or his car, and you say no, well, either you're an idiot, you're a liar, or you're telling the truth. And if you're telling the truth, then the question must be, then why did you arrest Brian? Why did you put that car all over the PCA? Why did you draw a map of these? That's what's kind of fucked up. The map that you drew, none of the imagery or video from that map can identify Brian or his car as being that. And the cop says, no. Well, then, you fucking moron. It's like calling a fucking cat a dog and a dog a cat. I'm supposed to just accept it and not question the stupidity of it. I don't say he's innocent, Heather. I won't go there. And I keep saying over and over again. People think I'm arguing for his innocence, and that's exactly not what I'm doing. I'm not arguing for anybody's innocence or guilt. So the motive for the stream was ribs. Oh, and I want to end with this too. I actually got my Alexa to say my balls itch. You guys want to hear that story real quick? I got the Alexa device to state my balls itch. Okay? How do you like them fucking apples? How many of these cam videos don't show color? Let's show what color. Yeah, how many of those cams can prove it was a white car? Kane B, you idiot. What is that? Kane. Who's Kane? Kane B is the purge. Come on. Isn't that kind of shocking that I got Alexa to say my balls itch? I got to hear a reply from somebody in the chat room before I hang up. Is that shit fucking off the hook or what? I would tell you how to do it, but I'm kind of want to set it up next to this microphone so that you can hear Alexa say, my balls itch. It is fucking comical. Apparently my Alexa has balls. I think I have one of the very few, maybe it's very rare, trans fucking gendered fucking Alexas. As far as I know, I think I might be one of the only people in America. I should probably put this on the market and sell it. I think her change her name to Alex. I think it will be one of the most watched trials in a long time. All right, everybody be good. I'm going to enjoy, as you know, some ribs. I may be back tonight. I may not. I'm not sure. I'm kind of all talked out on the Idaho 4. But thank you all for coming in. Thanks for the likes. Thanks for the dislikes. And if anybody senses that fucking goofball in here that I blocked, just give me his name. I'll block that name too. All right? So we'll talk to you. Yeah, Kohlberger was shitting off the top of the cell tower. That's why you couldn't pick up his phone. He climbed up the tower to take a dump. Nobody noticed. Everyone be good.